Hi everyone. This is a video documentation on how to go about installing Raspbian into your Raspberry Pi. According to Raspberry Pi organization, there seems to be three different ways. Well, at least I think there are three different ways to go about installing a system image or an operating system into your Raspberry Pi. The first method, which is the easiest way, is to use the official Raspberry Pi imager, which is super simple. I'm using a Mac, so I'm gonna go. I installed the Raspberry Pi imager for Mac, um, and then you can also individually, if you don't use the official imager, you can use other third-party softwares to do so. We'll go through that. So let's say you go through the second method, and which is to use a third-party software. You would then, and if you're looking to install a Raspbian, you have three different flavors. You have one which is Raspbian Lite. It doesn't come with a desktop, and then you have the one with a desktop, but with just a few essential, I guess, applications. And then you have with desktop and pretty much all of the recommended softwares that comes with Raspbian. You can also install other third-party system images. You can install Ubuntu MATE, LibreElec. I think it's pronounced LibreElec. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then you can also install like PiNet, which is pretty cool. I found out that PiNet is pretty much a server. You'll create a network of Raspberry Pis. It is essentially the solution it brings is so that you don't have to create a username and password per Raspberry Pi. So imagine you're using it for a school, and you don't want your students to have to carry either the SD card or to create more, hundreds of different user accounts. So you would use a PiNet server, and you'll create a central repository of user accounts. It's sort of like Active Directory for Windows. Essentially, what you're trying to solve is to have a roaming user account, like in your school system, university, or a corporation, where you could just go in and log into any computer you want using your username and password. Okay, so enough talk. Let's go see how to install it. So Raspberry Pi imager, which is pretty cool. And first you choose your OS. It seems like, for example, the first one chosen for you is pretty much, it's like halfway between Lite and the full version. You could also get like the full Raspbian or the Lite, which doesn't come with. I think for my purpose, I'm going to install Raspbian Lite. But I'm just curious, and I just want to see what it looks like. There's also Ubuntu Core. You have different versions that you can choose from. It really is cool. And again, I don't know how to pronounce it. I think it's LibreElec. And choose the version of Raspberry Pi you have, and take it from there. You could also, the really cool thing I like about this tool is that you can also erase your SD card if you want to try another flavor. So I'm going to choose the first recommended version, and that's it. It's chosen for you. Select the SD card. That's mine, and click on write.
Let's just wait. Oh, password. And we're waiting. Okay, let's skip. Let's fast forward through this.
All right, seems like this is done. Now let's go see how it looks like when we put this up. Okay, so we have our freshly loaded Raspbian, and we're going to see now. It's going to turn on, and it should load up. There we go. and this is what it looks like. Sorry about that. Monitor. And this is pretty much, you're just gonna have to follow through the prompts to configure rest of the way. This is, this is the first method. I think it's pretty simple. There we go, we're done. And go through the prompts to configure your Raspberry Pi. I have a wireless mouse. It doesn't seem to be working. I'm just gonna go through the general stuff, and I think I can skip this, and that's it. You're ready to use your Raspberry Pi, pretty much. Right, so that was pretty cool. On to the next method. This is the I call it the second method. Before we go and do that, I just want to make sure that my SD card is empty. I'm just going to erase it using the Raspberry Pi imager. The second method, some may argue that this is probably the first method, but I think it's primarily made for noobs, which is why it's called Noobs. So essentially, if you take the Noobs method, maybe it's for newbies, I don't know, but anyway, there are two options. You can go with the Noobs Lite, which will require that you are connected to the internet, and you will have a primary selection from which you can select different operating system that you can install. I haven't seen it yet, so we'll see it together. If you don't want to do a network install, you want to do an offline and network. So offline, I think, comes with Raspbian and LibreELEC, and for rest of the other options or selections, you would probably have to have you will need a network connection for you to be able to install them. So I went ahead and downloaded this, and I'm gonna now, using a Raspberry Pi imager, I'm going to image Noobs. So essentially what's going on is that this option is great for starters. Essentially what would happen is you could also get an SD card with Noobs installed in it, so you don't have to bother with any of these things, and you just install, put the SD card in, and you can take it from there. But let's just see what it looks like. So imagine you're creating that Noobs SD card, so you would click on Use Custom, and there we have it, Noobs. Select your SD card. Okay, and write. Okay, so it's done. Now let's go see what it looks like when it boots up. Okay, now we got the Noobs installed into our SD card. SD card is in there. Now what we're gonna do is turn it on and see what it looks like. Sorry for the ridiculously low quality video. I don't have a GoPro with me right now. So let's go see it. I'm just gonna turn it on. Okay. There we go. That's just my monitor. I have an ultra wide screen monitor, so it's giving me a prompt. Okay, that's it. Noobs is initializing. Again, it came with two images that you can install from. One is Raspbian Full or LibreELEC.
you can now you could also connect to your Wi-Fi, and or if you were connected by an Ethernet cable, it would then give you an option to drill down and select from other available Linux distributions. So you can select and then click on install, and that should get you through the installation process.
All right, so we made it into our method 3. Let's recap. The first step was using Raspberry Pi and directly from there, Raspberry Pi Imager, and we downloaded directly from the internet. The second portion was, the second method was to install Noobs and boot from Noobs, and from there we would have gotten installed the rest of the way. The third method is, the reason I call it the third method is because you probably have to do a little bit more research. Suppose you don't want to install any of these, okay? And you want to install, well, Ubuntu is one of those things, but let's say you want to install a 64-bit operating system. There's one from Ubuntu MATE, and it says it's experimental, but you can install it 64-bit. There's one from CentOS. However, CentOS, I don't think they have a 64-bit version yet, so I'm going to skip that. Yeah, so I'm kind of skeptical of it. Oh, there we go, 32-bit quick start, but 64-bit it's coming soon. So once they have an operating system ready, you should be able to install it from there. I do have, and I'll put all of these links in the description. I found that openSuse, SUSE Linux, can be installed, and so and here are the options that you can go through. There's also one from Fedora Core, but if I go to download, it says if I go to Raspberry Pi, okay, yeah, they do have a 64-bit version of the operating system for your Raspberry Pi Pi 3 model, Model B or above. Or I think Raspberry Pi 3 can also, but you just make sure that you can. What we're trying to solve here, what I'm trying to solve here is to get a 64-bit version operating system so that I can run other 64-bit applications in it. And so I already went ahead and downloaded. I'm gonna go with openSuse. It seems like they have a build ready. So I went ahead and downloaded that already. So let's go and install it. So yeah, it's not that difficult. You don't have to boot from your SD card separately, and then to install any of this, you just need a disk image, just like the other four the two methods we've already done. So I'm going to select a custom, and here it is, openSuse. Great. And it's my SD card, and I'm going to write it. All right, so it's done. Now let's go see it on my screen.
Okay, so the SD card with the openSuse or SUSE Linux imaged, and I'm gonna turn it on, and here we go again. The rainbow color, no Ethernet found. It's fine.
Again, sorry for the ridiculous iPhone video. I don't have a GoPro. Well, I have it, I just don't have it with me right now. So yeah, just gonna go through its initial process, and it should boot just about right.
Also, just to make sure that you are able to log in, the default username and password is root, and the password is Linux, Linux. Well, I just messed it up. And that will get you in. Now be sure to, change the password. You don't want it to be default password. And yeah, that's it.